Young, homegrown starting pitching was behind the Giants' championship run. And so on a night like last night, with Hayden Birdsong and Kyle Harrison just dominating on the mound, it's hard not to get excited about the possibility of that again.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show so you can get these episodes right when they come out. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And coming up on today's show, we're going to get into Hayden Birdsong taking flight in his first start of the 2025 season. It was an exciting day for Giants fans for all the reasons I just mentioned. We'll also get into Patrick Bailey, who it's been a very interesting season for Bailey, who's been very bad with the bat and yet has a lot of value. And we'll get into the value he provides and specific numbers behind that value. And then also, how was this team and specifically the bullpen built? They have the best earned run average in baseball as a bullpen. And as we're going to see, it's a lot of homegrown talent. And so, like I said, there's like a common thread between what we're seeing right now and what we saw in the late 2000s and early 2010s. It's not exactly the same, and there are differences, but certainly when you see a young arm like Hayden Birdsong go out there and do what he did last night in his first start of the year, you can't help but get excited. So Birdsong went 5 innings, gave up 5 hits. I said the key was going to be, it's not a secret, strike throwing. And if he walked 2 or fewer, I said I expected good results. And sure enough, he walked none and gave up no earned runs. 1 run, but it was unearned. It was his own error that allowed that runner to score. So it's always a little funny, but nonetheless, an unearned run, 5 hits, no walks, 4 strikeouts in 5 innings. And so he did pick up the win. And, not that I think they care, pitchers care, but I don't really care about pitcher wins. But nonetheless, Hayden Birdsong, you could see it in his face. He's a young guy. He's 23 years old. He was born in August of 2001. And Kruk and Kipe, I think it was Kruko, was talking about the mound presence that he has at just 23 years old and a confidence without being overly cocky. He's just a very confident guy. And you look at the stuff that he features and it's just kind of electric stuff. And one of the big things that he did to get to where he is that he developed this changeup, which has kind of become an elite pitch, when before I remember reading scouting reports on Birdsong that his changeup was poor, very poor. And Birdsong himself in an article, I can't remember who wrote it, said that his changeup was poor. He called it just essentially a bad fastball, which means it's just slower. But these days, teams and analysts alike can dissect the quality of a pitch by looking at spin rates, spin efficiency, movement profiles, velocities, extension, all kinds of stuff that you can look at and just evaluate a pitch quality without even seeing how hitters react to it. And the Fangraphs updated scouting report after Birdsong changed his changeup was quote, the addition of a quote kick changeup caused Birdsong's scouting projection to ascend from a good reliever's grade to a mid-rotation starter's grade during his 2024 rookie season. So for the very reason of just developing a much better changeup, he went in scouts' minds from being a reliever profile to being mid-rotation starter is nothing to scoff at. But I think if he can just pound the strike zone, they're ceiling for more than just mid-rotation starter, because he averages, I'm trying to pull it up here with the velocity. Yeah, he averages 96.1 with his four-seam fastball. His slider is 88.6. The curve is 80 or 70.9, and the changeup is 89. So, back in the day, there were a lot of guys whose fastball, look at Barry Zito or something, they're throwing fastballs at that velocity, and Birdsong's throwing 89.1 mile an hour changeups. They're often hitting 90, and it's a ferocious pitch. I don't have the results against it pulled up, although I actually can try to pull that up, because I'm guessing the results have not been good against that pitch, because from what I've seen, it's just nasty. So I do have the numbers here. The league, he's thrown 103 of them, and 29 plate appearances have concluded with the changeup, and the league is hitting 214 with a 250 slugging. So not a good batting average and no power to speak of against that pitch. And the launch angle against it is -3. So it's a ground ball inducing pitch, or at least it has been so far. And yeah, so that pitch alone makes him, it's just, I'm looking at the profile. It has so much more drop than normal. It drops 6.2 inches more than comparable changeup. So I guess when they say comparable, it means compared with pitches within 2 miles an hour and half a foot of extension / release. So where's the ball being released? So pitches, even among 90 mile an hour changeups that are released in a similar spot where he releases it, his drops 6.2 inches more than average. And so that's what we're talking about here. And it also has 12.2 inches of arm side run, which is actually a little less than average, which is kind of crazy to me. Most, I guess, comparable changeups run over a foot arm side. So that just shows you why hitting is so difficult at the major league level. But anyway, Hayden Birdsong, in addition to Kyle Harrison, who followed him up out of the bullpen, it went Randy Rodriguez in between, just another dynamite inning. He walked one, but struck out 3 in a scoreless, hitless frame for Randy Rodriguez, lowering his ERA to 0.87. And then Kyle Harrison, who did end up getting charged with a run, but once again, we saw the mid to upper 90s velocity from Kyle Harrison, and that's just such a big deal for him. And Kyle Harrison is also 23 years old, also born in August 2001. I feel like I may have said 2021 for Birdsong, but obviously that would be wrong. 2001 for Harrison and for Birdsong. And it's hard not to get excited when you look at these young, talented arms, and there's more coming. And you've got Logan Webb, who he's signed for 3 additional seasons, I believe. And you've got Carson Wisenhunt coming down the pipeline. Yeah, Logan Webb, a free agent after the 2028 season. So 6, 7, 8, 3 years after this year. And so, the pitching future is bright, and that's not to even really mention the bullpen. So one of the guys who helps these pitchers be the best they can be is Patrick Bailey, who, despite his bat being, we'll check, but I would venture to say among the worst among regulars this year, he still provides value. And so we'll get into exactly how much value and why in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you in part by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And to me, if you've got multiple accounts, like, it is just completely game-changing to be able to use Monarch Money and have everything in one place and to be able to see it all. Stop bouncing around. It just doesn't make any sense. It's hard to stay organized. Having it all in one place is life-changing, I'm telling you. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. And if you use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com, you will get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, as promised, we're going to get into Patrick Bailey, who has been, I would venture to say, we're going to find out together, one of the worst regular offensive players in baseball this year. He's just been like an automatic out, basically, in the Giants lineup, although he's had some big hits. But nonetheless, it's been a struggle for the 25-year-old Bailey this season offensively, yet still producing value. And we'll also get into how this team was built, kind of revisiting a theme we looked at earlier this year, but also the bullpen. How do you build an MLB best bullpen? Well, maybe different than you might think. So thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down the finale of this series. Can the Giants win with Logan Webb on the mound? Royals going, I think it's a bullpen game. Daniel Lynch the fourth, who has, he's not started a game all year. 20 games. Yeah, so they're starting a lefty. There's no secret. The Giants have struggled against lefties. And so we'll see, can, behind Webb, the Giants win a series despite losing the first game. I feel like that's something that they've done several times this year. We'll see if they can do it today, and we'll be breaking it down tomorrow. So anyway, Patrick Bailey, he's got 136 plate appearances. And so together, we're going to find out where his 33 weighted runs created plus, meaning he's been 67% below average offensively. He's hitting 179, 230, 244 slugging, 230 on base, I should say, 244 slugging. These are abysmal offensive numbers. 33 weighted runs created plus, 136 plate appearances. So if we set the minimum to, 130 plate appearances, where does that 33 weighted runs created plus come in? Aaron Judge is first, been about 148% above average offensively. That would be nice. And Patrick Bailey, third lowest weighted runs created plus among all players with at least 130 plate appearances. And there's 203 players. So 203 players have had at least 130 plate appearances. And Bailey's 33 weighted runs created plus is the third lowest. Now, you do have some good names here like Marcus Semien and Jock Peterson in the bottom six. Lamont Wade Jr. is 12th worst. So you've got two players who are kind of regulars in your lineup in the bottom 12 among 203. So that is not ideal. But focusing on Bailey, I mean, actually, I really want to see, even if we set the minimum to 100, he still comes in fifth worst among 260 players. So it's no doubt or no secret Patrick Bailey has struggled, and struggled much more even than the last 2 years when overall the performance has been not very, but quite subpar with the bat. Now, nonetheless, it strikes me that despite being one of the worst hitters in baseball, Bailey, according to Fangraphs, has produced half a win above replacement, which is not great, but it's like above. How do you go from being one of the worst hitters in baseball to being above replacement level? And it's obviously defense. And he did it again yesterday. And it's not just the framing numbers, which we'll look at, but it's also the throwing out runners, which we saw in a huge situation. He threw out Bobby Witt Jr., who I do believe is the fastest player in baseball. Sprint speed, I can pull this up right now. Bobby Witt Jr., fastest player in baseball. 30.3 feet per second sprint speed, number one in the game. And Bobby Witt Jr., I don't know how many times he's been caught stealing this year, but we're about to find out together. He has stolen 16 bases, and he's been caught, 5 times. So he had been caught 4 times, 16 out of 20 going into that steal attempt against Bailey. But Bailey got him, and it was a 1-run game in that situation. And that's just what Bailey does. And so, when he first came up, there were all these comparisons right away to Buster Posey, which I said immediately, stop it. And I think it's proven to be true. It's like, no, you're not talking about Buster Posey here. You're talking more like a Yadier Molina type influence with what Bailey does defensively. And so if he could just hit even like his self the last 2 years, and to me, there's no reason why in year 3 of your major league career, you would suddenly get much worse offensively. If anything, I would expect improvement a little bit offensively, but it's not been the case for Bailey so far this year. So hopefully in the remaining 70% of the season, he's even just 20% below average offensively. He's still like a essentially like borderline star level player because of what he does defensively. So fielding run value, just straight up fielding run value. We can compare players from all kinds of different positions. All the different positions. Bailey comes in as the 3rd most valuable defender according to StatCast's fielding run value metric, which I believe is in runs above average at 7 for Bailey. And that's 4 runs coming from his framing, 2 coming from his throwing, and 1 coming from his blocking. And yes, again, that is the 3rd highest mark in all of baseball among all defenders, not just catchers. So if we go and dig a little bit deeper and look at catcher framing, where there's been some talk that his framing numbers aren't as good this year, but he ranks as the 2nd most valuable framer with those 4 runs, catcher framing runs, and I do believe it is in a above average, or just is it runs in general? I don't actually know at the moment, and I don't want to read through this at the time, but his strike rate, the way we look at this is like, we look at the shadow zone, which is like the area in the zone and out of the zone, just inside and just outside. And it's like, what is the rate of called strikes when you catch a pitch in that shadow zone, like borderline, right? And for Bailey, he's at 47.8%, and that ranks 7th among all catchers, all 59 catchers that are qualified. But he also catches a lot, and so he ranks 7th there. But the guys ahead of him, a lot of them don't. They're probably the backup catchers, and they're there more for their defense. And I don't know. So Bailey, in terms of the run value, because he catches so much and is quite good at the framing, comes in as the 2nd most valuable catcher for framing. And if we look at last year, he's going to be number 1. Now, pop time is another big thing for Bailey, and he comes in at number 2. It's essentially a tie for pop times to second base, and this is critical. It's the time from when the ball hits his glove to when it gets into the vicinity of second base. It's not actually when it touches the glove of the whoever's catching it. This is not a steal attempt, of course, because sometimes they catch it deeper, sometimes they catch it further out, closer. And so it's more like when the ball reaches the receiving point at the center of the base. That's what it says here. The moment the ball reaches the fielder's projected receiving point at the center of the base. So it puts it all, because otherwise you're talking about, depending on who catches it, it can change the pop time. So it's all put into like a neutral level playing field. And for Bailey, he's just extremely quick. And his, pop times to third base, he only has one third base throw. So those are kind of, we don't look at those as closely. But his arm strength, Bailey ranks, it's not the best. He's 23rd in arm strength at, I'm assuming this is average, the average throw, 83.4 miles an hour. There's 22 guys who throw harder, but it's the exchange time. It's the exchange time for Bailey, which is 8th. So if you combine the arm strength with the exchange time, it comes out to the fastest, or tied for the fastest, or maybe technically second fastest pop time in the major leagues. And he's always going to rank there. And so when I say always, I mean, he has ranked at the top or second, like every year he's been in the league. And so the thing too is that catchers contribute a lot defensively. It's no surprise, but framing in particular is the most valuable thing a catcher can do in terms of how many runs it saves by being good at it. And that's because the count has an enormous effect on outcomes. If you look at a 1-1 pitch, and if it's a borderline pitch and it's a strike versus if it's a ball, it dramatically changes what the expected outcome of that at bat is. And so you're doing that over and over and over and over every game to every hitter, and it adds up. And in terms of blocking, it's the least important, least impactful thing that a catcher does in terms of runs. Although, yeah. So the number one blocker has 2 runs worth of blocking value, and the worst catcher has -2 runs. So that just goes to show you that people make such a big fuss about the new style of catching, but it just doesn't. First of all, there's no evidence that there's more wild pitches or pass balls than before this style came into fashion. And also, framing just has such a bigger impact on games than blocks. And it's you have to realize that it's because of count influence. It's not just like strike 3 calls. It's changing the count from 1-0 to 0-1, and from 2-2 to 3-2 or strike 3. Like it's every pitch, and it makes a big difference, and it just adds up because there's so many pitches, whereas there's not that many block attempts, and especially there's not that many critical block attempts. Anyway, Bailey ranks in terms of blocks above average at +3, and catcher blocking runs, he ranks 13th out of 63 catchers. So just everything he does, he's added value with the glove, and it's the most critical defensive position. And so even when he isn't hitting at all, he's still providing a lot of value. And Fangraphs says 11 runs above average so far this year with his defense. 11 runs above average. But 70-ish% below average offensively. Amazing. Anyway, coming up in just a minute, I want to continue our discussion that we started earlier this year about how was this team built, but also just specifically the bullpen, which has the best earned run average in the major leagues. We'll look at how homegrown is the theme and why that's important in just a minute. And before we do, all right, as promised, we're going to get into one major theme here, which is that this roster was almost entirely constructed not by Buster Posey. And yet it's just such an interesting dynamic to me that I think rightfully so, there's a lot of credit that gets given to Buster Posey for this team doing well right now. They're 29-20, and that's up there among the best records in baseball. They're just one game back of the Dodgers, who needed kind of a miracle comeback to avoid being tied with the Giants last night. Thanks again, by the way, for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down the finale of this series against the Royals. Can the Giants win the series despite losing the first game? They've got Logan Webb going, so good shot at it. If they can just hit, they should be in pretty good shape. We'll see. And then they've got the day off on Thursday before heading out on the road for a long road trip. So, yeah, I just wanted to circle back on how interesting it is that the Giants' record is 29-20. They've had what everyone would call like a good start to the season, plus 46 run differential, and yet the moves that Buster Posey made in his first offseason as president of baseball operations were to sign Willy Adames and Justin Verlander. And the other moves were very much fringy, around the edges type moves, if like any of significance. And Willy Adames has struggled, and Justin Verlander has been kind of mediocre at best, or let's just say mediocre. And yet Buster Posey gets a lot of credit for the way that they've performed. So it's just very interesting to me, and I want to reemphasize that I said, I think rightfully so. There's a palpable change in kind of the vibe around this team, and it's not just with the players, it's with the fans. Like, it just let out a huge amount of stress and pressure when Posey took over. There's a level of trust that, and I think it does extend down to the players, but it's also with the fans. There's just a level of this organization is in good hands. I mean, there was these crazy conspiracy theories. Even a fellow Locked On host brought it up to me that Farhan Zaidi was a Dodgers spy or something like that, which is insane. And yet that was the kind of rhetoric that it was just not good for like 6 years. There was constantly a fight about the direction of the team, and the results also weren't good outside of 2021. Let's be clear about that. But otherwise, this team was like built by the previous regime. You look at Mike Yastrzemski, the trade to get him. I'm looking through their kind of lineup. Wilmer Flores, signed by the previous regime. Jung-Hoo Lee, signed by the previous regime. Elliot Ramos, drafted by 2 regimes ago, the Brian Sabian era. Matt Chapman, a little bit iffy on who you want to give credit for Chapman, the Chapman signing to, kind of a joint effort, let's call it. Lamont Wade Jr., traded for by the previous regime. Patrick Bailey, drafted by the previous regime, as with Tyler Fitzgerald, as with Casey Schmidt. And you look at Logan Webb, drafted by 2 regimes ago, extended by the previous regime. Landa Roop, drafted by the previous regime. Robbie Ray, traded for by the previous regime. Hayden Birdsong, drafted by the previous regime. And then in the bullpen, it's just a bunch of, like, the only guys who are not homegrown are, I don't want to mess this up, but Eric Miller was traded for. They got him for Junior Marte in a trade with the Phillies, so that was another really good, low-key, under-the-radar trade by the previous regime. And Jordan Hicks, right now in the bullpen, signing by the previous regime, so not drafted and developed by the Giants. And Spencer Bivens was signed out of independent ball in 2022, and so that kind of counts, I guess, as homegrown in a sense. But Kyle Harrison, homegrown. Randy Rodriguez, I do believe, was signed by the Giants, out of the Dominican Republic in 2017. So that's 2 regimes ago. And that, I mean, Randy Rodriguez is looking like one of the best pitchers, best relievers in baseball right now. Tyler Rogers, homegrown, and spent forever in the minor leagues before finally getting a shot in 2019, and all he's done is put up a 2.88 ERA in 369 innings. And Camilo Doval, international signing out of the Dominican in 2015, so homegrown. And finally, Ryan Walker was drafted 2 regimes ago by the Giants. So there's just so much homegrown talent here when we're looking at the bullpen. And you also look at the starting rotation when we are talking about Logan Webb, and then now the addition of Hayden Birdsong into there and Kyle Harrison potentially into there one day, and then Carson Wisenhunt, who's not even on the 40-man but has been dominating in AAA and definitely factors in to this pitching staff moving forward, just a matter of when. And all of a sudden, it's just there's so much homegrown pitching talent that it's kind of mind-boggling. And right now it's leading to really good results with those homegrown players. And it's an exciting thing, like I said, because the last time the Giants had a lot of success, it started with a core of homegrown pitching, but also some position players. Let's not forget they had Buster Posey on that team. He was a good defensive catcher and he hit like a star. And so that's a Hall of Fame player. And, Pablo Sandoval, they got Hunter Pence, they had Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford. So of course you need some hitters too. But right now I think they've got a lot of good offensive pieces in place. Could you upgrade in some spots? Yeah. But otherwise, I just like where this team is at. But let's just remember that it was almost exclusively not built by Buster Posey, yet I really do think tone setting and the message he's delivered to players and how fans feel right now does have so much to do with him. So it's just an interesting dynamic. We've mentioned it before, but I just wanted to circle back on it again because I'm just struck by it every day when we see a guy like Hayden Birdsong go out there. It's like, well, who drafted him? And the old regime got a lot of negative feedback for their drafting and developing, and yet here's Hayden Birdsong. People love him, and he's doing great in this start. Well, he was drafted by the previous regime, and anyway, it's just an interesting dynamic, and I'm just pointing it out for the sake of pointing it out that it's true. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter/X @BenKaspick, KASPICK. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.